Hi, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This microphone taken? Ryan, what happened? What happened to your mic? I hear it's different.
I don't have my fancy mic with me in Puerto Vallarta today.
Okay.
We're doing it old school.
That's okay, especially because I think we got to keep it short because I've got a great interview today that I really want to be the focus of the episode. I'm sorry to say that it's not you, Ryan.
I'm excited for this. This is like a throwback to one of our most popular interviews ever.
So gosh. Anissa Helou, she's a cookbook writer. She is a great researcher. She came on originally, and I'll throw in the show notes her last episode that was all about foods of the Islamic world. And this time she's focused on where she grew up, which is Lebanon. And I was just drooling by the end of the conversation.
I love some Lebanese food. There's a good place in Bogota called Beirut that I get to every once in a while. So I'm excited for this. You ever cook any Lebanese at the Schmidt house?
Yeah, I would say the dips that we tend to do have a good Lebanese profile. And of course, the day job at Clover, we're all about hummus and falafel and za'atar. And she and I talk about that a little bit. And, she was citing falafel as basically the equivalent of fast food there.
Oh, that's pretty good fast food.
It's pretty different than the American. I mean, she said there's McDonald's and things, but I just think like, gosh, if there was great falafel and hummus available all over the place, we'd be so much healthier. You wouldn't even need Ozempic anymore.
I mean, you can eat a lot of falafel though. I think falafel is probably, isn't that deep fried?
It's fried. It's like flash fried. What's the difference between deep fried and flash fried, really?
I just know that deep fried is bad.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When you eat falafel, you're eating like this little bit of fried stuff in the middle, and it's surrounded by chickpeas and pickled cabbage and all of this healthy stuff around it. So yeah, you've got a little bit of unhealthy and a lot of healthy.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably better than a double cheeseburger, but
exactly, and that's where the comparison should be. So Anissa goes in. I learned a lot about Lebanon's history, a lot about the cultural diversity that she uncovered. Some of it was really, even though she lived there for 21 years, some of that was even a discovery to her. So interesting to hear her take. It's also beautiful photography in the book. I should mention, just because we're talking about it a lot, the name of the book is Lebanon. So if you want to look it up, you're definitely going to want to buy it after we speak with Anissa.
And we'll definitely drop a link in the show notes to make it easy to do that.
From an independent bookstore, of course, right?
Yes.
Now, before we jump into the interview, though, I do think it's important for us to acknowledge our favorite troll is back in our reviews. Apple Podcast seems to just let you come back, every 6 months. And I think Cornhusker 55 has an alarm set. We got another 1-star review. Really horrible is the name of it. And hosts are super immature millennials. I mean, are we millennials, Ryan?
Elder millennials.
Thank you, elder millennials. Almost zero knowledge of the subject matter. It's like they're reading Wikipedia. Sad lack of knowledge. Great. Cornhusker, we welcome you. It's good to hear from you. And I also liked it was paired with, in May, we got a review. The name is DNDJDJEBRLSNSBD, so it's definitely not a bot. 3 stars. It's okay. And their recommendation was review Enid, Oklahoma 2, please.
We don't really review places. That's a different kind of idea.
Yeah, these are examples of reviews we cannot use.
It's like Boston, like a C+, in New York.
Hey. Maybe before Secret Boston got published, but it's on the. Also, now that we're at the 250 anniversary, I mean, Boston is the place to be this year.
That is true. You guys have a big UFC fight or anything like that planned?
Yeah, they're going to dress up, tri-corner hats, and it's going to be on a ship in Boston Harbor.
That I would watch, actually. That would be fun.
You know what? And some of the trolls might like it because the original Boston Tea Party, they actually dressed as Native Americans. So you throw some of that in there. I mean, it could be an event.
I know you couldn't do that today. Ugh.
But Ryan, I do want to say, I like to put a spotlight on Cornhusker because we do really appreciate the positive reviews that have been coming in because it just takes this stuff just out. You got to overwhelm these trolls. So if you like Out of Office, if you like me, or if you like Ryan, you don't need to like both of us. But if you like one of us, please go to where you listen. Give us 5 stars. Give it a positive review. This helps people find the podcast. It makes us feel good. And put your real recommendations into the reviews. We read them here, and we take them into account when we're deciding what to cover next.
And we prioritize 5-star review requests.
Of course. And so, Ryan, while we keep one eye out for those reviews, which should be rolling in, I think it's time. I just don't want to delay, and I don't really want to hear you off mic anymore. Let's go talk to Anissa Helou.
Oh, the cabin crew.
Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
My guest today is Anissa Helou, cookbook author and general bon vivant. Anissa focuses on foods of the Mediterranean, Middle East, and North Africa and brings a wonderful verve to her writing and research. And she was one of the first guests on Out of Office, I think about 7 years ago. And she's back to talk about her new book, Lebanon, Cooking the Foods of My Homeland. It's a wonderful book. Anissa, welcome back to Out of Office.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And so I have to ask, are you in Lebanon right now?
Yeah, I am. Only 2 days.
Given what a continental life I've picked up you've led, tell us about what's your personal connection to Lebanon? Why do you pick that as your homeland as someone who's lived so many different places?
Well, I was born in Lebanon and lived in the country until I was 21. So it's basically my homeland, even though I've lived twice as long, if not more than twice as long, outside. But throughout this time, I've gone back regularly. My parents, apart from times, some periods of times in the war during the Civil War, lived there all the time, and I've got lots of friends. And I never lost touch with the country, nor with the language, and nor with the food either.
And for those who don't know much about Lebanon, just give us a sense. In your book, you really you give kind of a pocket history and geography of what Lebanon is like. The landmass itself is pretty small. You describe it as half the size of New Jersey. So I think to an American who has such an enormous country to think of, diversity in food and culture, it comes with the scale. So how is it that there's so much diversity packed across Lebanon?
Well, it's a very young country. It was not a country until 1945 when it got its independence. Before that, it was under French mandate, but not as what they call the Greater Lebanon. And until then, it belonged to the Ottoman Empire. Before the French mandate, until the First World War, it belonged to the Ottoman Empire and was under Greater Syria. So it wasn't defined as such as a country. But the mountains of Lebanon have always been autonomous. And because it was put together in this kind of rather strange way by French people and the Maronite community, it was kind of pieced together from different regions that had different confessions, different religions, majority religions. And so it's a country that is kind of put together with little kind of feudal estates, let's say, or feudal regions that belong to Druze or to Muslim Shias or to Sunni Muslims. And of course, a majority then a Christian community. Things have changed. So you have a lot of different, like in the South, they eat quite differently from in the North. And the country is completely coastal. So that makes it also quite interesting.
And you wrote an earlier book that centered on Lebanese cuisine. So how did it change from when you wrote that in the 90s to this new book?
Well, the country hasn't changed much, except that it's much more miserable now because it has a lot of problems. But my first book is all about my mother and her recipes. And I wrote it at a time at the very end of the Civil War when I had not been to the country for more than 10 years. Whereas this book is all about traveling across the country with a friend photographer who took photographs and talking to people in situ, as it were. So nothing to do with my mother, although my mother has always been in the background and a fount of knowledge of Lebanese food and culinary lore. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but was until not so long ago. And so this book is centered around the country itself, the people who I met in my travels around the country, with lots of photographs, location photographs, as well as studio photography. So it's a very, very different book from the first one. I mean, of course, there are universal recipes, but there are also a lot of regional recipes that even some Lebanese people don't know. And I didn't know.
What was how would you describe your mother's cuisine that you grew up with that you knew as Lebanese food?
Well, it's basically the mountains of Lebanon. My mother is Maronite, so it was kind of like the Christian community, the cooking of the mountains, and a very sort of classic Lebanese, let's say, but from that particular region. So I will give you an example. For instance, like you know about kibbeh, I'm assuming, because you've read my book.
Yes. But for those who don't, please let us know what that is.
It can be lots of different things, but meat kibbeh is a mixture of minced lamb and bulgur wheat, fine bulgur wheat, and spiced not with chili, but with like 7 spices, allspice, and cinnamon. And it can be made in all kinds of different shapes, like bowls, pie, discs, etc. And you have vegetarian versions because of the Christian community who kind of don't eat meat over Lent, over 40 days of Lent, and every Friday if they're very faithful. And whereas in the South, they make kibbeh with tomatoes, they make kibbeh with potatoes, they make kibbeh with very fine minced meat. And instead of, sometimes they mix it with the bulgur wheat, but the bulgur wheat is mixed with herbs and spices. And sometimes they have the raw meat and that very, very green and spiced bulgur wheat mixture spread on top, depending. And so they have all kinds of different versions that I didn't know about an hour away from Beirut until I started researching, more before I started researching this book, because I have a friend from the South who introduced me to them, but I didn't know about them until then.
I believe it was kibbeh too, where you do have photographs of your mother preparing it on the stove, right? Yes. What I found really interesting about a lot of your recipes was you're very focused on a lot of techniques, especially trying to teach people. A lot of recipes will shortcut until you put something in the food processor, but actually the way something is cut, whether it's meat or vegetables, it really affects the final texture and flavor.
Absolutely. Like some people will make tabbouleh by putting the herbs in the food processor and then bruising them to death, and like the end result is horrible. Whereas you're supposed to shave the herbs in very, very fine slivers, julienne, in professional terms. I think it's very important when you're cooking, to pay attention to the sort of textures, to the final presentation, to every ingredient and how it should be prepared and how it should be kind of bought or used. You don't take mushy tomatoes to make tabbouleh. They need to be ripe, but they also need to be firm. So for me, it's very important to kind of prepare ingredients properly and then prepare the final dish the same way.
Are there particular descriptors that you would give that define Lebanese cuisine broadly, even within these regional variations? You say, how would you describe for someone who's never really engaged with Lebanese cooking? What defines it?
Well, first of all, it's a very vibrant cuisine, very fresh, lots of herbs, lots of lemon juice, lots of olive oil, lots of very kind of how shall I say, exquisite ingredients and very fresh on the whole, very varied, lots of salads, for instance. And if you want to kind of quantify a sort of like universal flavor, you would say lemony and oily, but not greasy, like all of dishes are cooked in olive oil. And you have this kind of unctuous, sort of silky sauce, tomato sauce, that the Italians will do the same, actually. But we use a lot of garlic, and the northern Italians will not want to hate garlic. So it's not garlic. I mean, it's not coarse. I think it's quite an elegant cuisine, and a lot of attention goes on presentation, a bit like the Japanese, but not as extremely aesthetic, let's say, and supremely healthy.
Yeah. And how about in the modern world? You dive into the history of some of these dishes. You talk about the way that your mother and grandmother were making them. How have things changed? Because in looking at some of the pictures and the processes, I was thinking, okay, for an American audience where you might have to buy some of these ingredients at a supermarket, you have no idea how long they've been on ice, how far they were shipped from. How has modern cooking changed versus some of these more traditional techniques that you break down in the book?
I don't think much has changed, except that now you can buy, for instance, stuffed vegetables. In the old days, the mothers and grandmothers and whatever had to core the vegetables or roll the vine leaves or whatever. Now you can buy like zucchini and eggplant already cored. So all you have to do is go back home, make the stuffing, fill them, and cook them. And you can buy a machine that rolls vine leaves as well. I mean,
wow.
And you get them like all the same size. They might not be as moist as when you roll them by hand, because you need to leave a bit of space for the rice to expand. But there are lots of shortcuts, but on the whole, people still like their traditional dishes and are reluctant to change them. So you have very few young chefs who are playing around with the cuisine, doing sort of what Western chefs do, using the sort of local ingredients, but coming up with different versions of maybe, kibbeh, let's say. But even like talking about kibbeh, there is a machine that makes the cylinders. And then all you have to do is fill, like close one side, fill it, and then make the oval balls, long or short or whatever. So you can use a lot of shortcuts, but there aren't very many people who are playing around with the dishes themselves. There are a few, but as long as they don't go too far from let's say, the classical flavors, or, food is all about memory as well. So if you want to eat, Lebanese food, you're thinking about, like the trinity of spices: cinnamon, allspice, and black pepper, and sometimes the 7-spice mixture. So if you don't use these in a kind of typical stew, or if you make your stew deconstructed and do something, I mean, I'm all for modernizing and cutting short and lightening dishes and making them more elegant and whatever. But as long as you retain the original flavor.
Is your average Lebanese family preparing fresh each day? I'm thinking dinner for a family, with 2 kids, 2 parents. So much of the cuisine you describe, it seems like it benefits from just how fresh it is. And, I'm thinking about when I'm using lemon, I'm never squeezing a lemon 4 hours before I'm going to eat it. I'm squeezing it right when I'm about to eat it, because that's when it's fresh. So what is the routine of meal making in your average Lebanese family today?
Well, if the mother is working and there is a good stepmother or a good granny, they will cook for the family. There is always home cooked food, whether it's by the immediate family or by the extended members of the extended family. So I have a friend who makes kibbeh bowls, like in yogurt sauce or whatever. But she no longer makes the kibbeh bowls herself. She buys them from a very good caterer who makes them almost as well as homemade. So there is always someone, somewhere, some company that can provide you with the traditional time-consuming elements of a dish. And then you put the dish together much faster. And of course, you have the freezer.
Yes. And is it just off the top of my head, is there a fast food culture in Lebanon?
Yeah, there is a fast food culture. A fast food culture of our own, like shawarma, falafel. Even hummus can be considered fast food because you'd go into these like small cafes or stalls to have hummus or full medames. But there is also McDonald's and all kinds of Western concepts. So you have both, but on the whole, most people like their own food. Like the Italians. I mean, we're very close. I mean, now that I spend a lot of time in Italy, I find the comparison quite interesting because Italians love their own food and we love our own food, except that ours is much more time consuming to prepare.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you mentioned that about the Italian cuisine because we've had a previous guest come on and talk about the diverse, what we consider Italian food is very much undercutting all the regional variations that you get within Italy. And he's written beautifully about that. And that really struck me when I was reading your book too about, sometimes there's a base recipe that crosses areas, but there's riffs on it. And I do want to get into some of the more specific ingredients and dishes and some of the variations you discovered, especially things that Americans might be familiar with one version, but not know about these others. I also want to focus on the recipes that I think translate pretty easily to the home kitchen of our listeners. So the first is za'atar. Growing up, I never heard of za'atar, but now I see za'atar everywhere. And so describe, what is za'atar? How is it used? And have you noticed this growth of za'atar globally as kind of a new spice?
Of course, I have noticed it, and except that it's not as powerful, but
sure.
I know it's gone global. I mean, many Lebanese ingredients or let's say Levantine ingredients in Lebanese dishes have gone global. Like hummus, for instance, has gone global. Tabbouleh has gone global, and then you've got all kinds of Western variations on it. But we also have our own variations. Za'atar is basically a mixture of dried thyme. Powdered dried thyme, ground sumac, and toasted sesame seeds, and a tiny bit of of salt. Then the classic way of using za'atar in Lebanon is mixing it with olive oil and using it as a topping on flatbread, which is manouche, which we have for breakfast. But most traditional homes will have a bowl of za'atar mixed with olive oil on their kitchen counter to just dip either a piece of bread in it or a piece of bread like with a scoop of labneh in it. You eat za'atar with labneh, you eat za'atar just with bread. We don't, one of the global ways of using za'atar now is smearing a chicken with za'atar and then roasting it.
Yes.
And it's called za'atar chicken. But we've never done that.
And I find because you wouldn't know this, but I actually work for a restaurant chain in Boston that makes hummus, falafel. We do za'atar pita, and it's a very Lebanese inspired menu. And I always found that any preparation where za'atar is going into the oven, you lose a lot of the flavor of it because you're just over roasting. You're sort of deadening those herbs in that mix.
Absolutely. And that's why when you mix za'atar with olive oil, it bubbles a little bit on the flatbread, but it's a very short time. Whereas if you're smearing a chicken with za'atar and you're roasting it for an hour, you've lost most of the flavor, really.
And how about tabbouleh?
Tabbouleh is very interesting salad. I mean, it's basically a herb and tomato salad with a smattering of bulgur wheat. It's definitely not a couscous salad and it's not a grain salad. But in Lebanon, I used to get, quite kind of annoyed with people making tabbouleh with lentils and tabbouleh with this and tabbouleh with that. It became a generic term. But in fact, in Lebanon, there are different versions of tabbouleh. One of them, I can't remember the recipe exactly, but it has awarma in it. Awarma is preserved lamb. It's like corn. It's like a lamb version of corned beef.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tiny pieces of lamb cooked in tail fat, and that it lasts forever. And this tabbouleh is like this. Then there's another tabbouleh that has chickpeas in it. With a lot of herbs. So you have different versions. They're not called tabbouleh as such. But the version with the preserved lamb is called tabbouleh. The other one with the chickpeas is called sif, but it's basically a tabbouleh, but I think without the tomatoes. So it's a classic. It's maybe the most classic of Lebanese salads. And on the whole, I would never order tabbouleh in a restaurant because it's never as good as when it's made at home.
Mm.
And if it's good at a restaurant, it means that the restaurant is paying a lot of attention to how they prepare it.
So you can judge them by their tabbouleh.
And hummus.
Yes. So actually, let's talk about hummus. There's so many variations on hummus now. I mean, there's really thin hummus, there's really thick hummus, there's dairy hummus, there's flavored hummus. What is the great traditional Lebanese hummus, and are there regional variations on that?
I think there are regional variations, mainly in the garnish or mixed in with the classic mixture, which is cooked chickpeas, tahini, lemon juice, and salt, and garlic, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can have a topping of awarma, for instance, that preserved lamb with toasted pine seeds. Or in the north, you can have a topping of toasted walnuts with melted clarified butter.
Mm.
Or you can mix the hummus with chopped parsley and garlic for a Beiruti version, but which is actually sold in Syria as a Beiruti version, not in Lebanon. But so there are variations, not very many, not as many as in the West, where they add avocado or chocolate or whatever. I mean, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But interesting thing in the West is that every dip, we have two types of dips. One which is mutabbal, which is with vegetables, roast vegetables on the whole. And then you have hummus. And in the West, everything is called hummus because the hummus has become a generic term for dip.
Yes. And what is the consistency in Lebanon? I remember I lived in London and in Edgware Road, which is a popular Middle Eastern area. I was surprised when I went into, I believe it was a Syrian grocery store, where I picked up a package of hummus and it was incredibly light. I thought, boy, is this like half full? And it was because the hummus was almost aerated. It had been blended so vigorously. But then you get some variations that are thick and almost like a paste. You know, you scoop it out and it drips extremely. It's very viscous. So what is Lebanese hummus? What's the ideal texture?
Well, it should be very creamy, but not runny.
Mm.
So a bit like labneh, let's say, but the hummus, the chickpea, tahini, lemon juice, and garlic mixture. And the reason why it's so creamy in Lebanese restaurants is that many of them peel the chickpeas, not one by one,
right?
Because nobody does unless they have a lot of patience. But by running cold water over the pot of boiling hummus and rubbing the chickpeas and letting the skins float to the surface and then skimming them. And what I do, I don't boil my chickpeas anymore, but I buy very good cooked chickpeas in glass jars, and I put them in a container. Then I rub them very lightly and just pick the half of the skins, not all of the skins. And then I get a slightly creamier mixture. But if you have a very powerful blender, you will get, without peeling the chickpeas, you will get a very creamy mixture.
I can't believe you even said chocolate hummus. I think that is one of the most egregious things ever created, chocolate hummus.
I saw it in the supermarket. I can't remember where.
Oh yeah, no, it's here. I've seen it. So how about kebabs and grilled meat? You dive into the history of sort of how that's really a weekly tradition. I do think that's one of the associations a lot of us have with Lebanese food. So what is the tradition around kebabs and grilled skewered meat?
Well, in the old days, it used to be a different. It's like the Sunday roast in England. The grilled kebabs were a Sunday thing in Lebanon, and people would kind of build a charcoal fire in a sort of small rectangular barbecue thing we call manal, and then they would season the meat, whether it's mincemeat or pieces of lamb or chicken wings or pieces of chicken, and then they would put them on skewers and then grill them over a charcoal fire. It is no longer so much a Sunday tradition, but it is very much a fixture of restaurants, Lebanese restaurants. So when you go to a Lebanese restaurant, you would order a whole lot of meze, and then if you're still hungry, you would order kebabs. And they can be anything. They can be testicles, they can be sweetbreads, they can be pieces of lamb like filet, they can be, the chicken wings are not put on skewers, but they can be little birds that people kind of scream at me for eating, but now I eat them only once a year because it's very non-PC to eat them.
Yes.
They're endangered, but it's basically whatever kind of meat you're thinking of, from kefta to filet of lamb or even beef. I mean, I don't like eating beef in Lebanon because it's never tender enough. To butterflied poussins or quail, two pieces of that are always served with toum. And the meat is usually served, they would put little bits of tail fat in between the pieces of meat, or cherry tomatoes or baby onions, pearl onions.
And is the charcoal fire an essential piece of that?
Yeah, for the flavor. I mean, I do mine in an oven because I don't have a charcoal, I don't have a barbecue, but it makes all the difference.
Yeah. What yogurt? I feel like yogurt is a really prime ingredient in Lebanese cooking in a way that it is not in the American kitchen. So, what is labneh, and describe the diversity of ways that it's used?
Well, labneh is basically strained yogurt. It's not a cheese. It's just yogurt put in a cotton cheesecloth and strained until however thick you want it. It can be slightly loose. It can be very thick. When they strain it to the maximum, they make labneh balls and preserve them in olive oil. But yogurt is a different thing. You can cook with yogurt. I mean, yogurt is served plain with stuffed vegetables or with kibbeh. And when it's served with kibbeh, it's mixed with dried mint and cucumber. But we have a lot of dishes which we use where we cook the yogurt and make a kind of base yogurt sauce and then drop either stuffed zucchini in it or kibbeh balls or like cooked fava beans with meat, lots of different versions. I mean, there is a version also where you poach eggs in the yogurt. I don't like it personally, but some people do.
And how do you heat a yogurt without causing it to curdle?
Well, you have to stabilize it either with cornstarch or with eggs. So, and you have to stir it all the time. Some people use both. I don't. I like to use only egg because I think it's more delicate. And I very rarely bring the yogurt to boiling point. I bring it to just under simmer or simmer. And then I turn off the heat. I finish whatever I'm using with it. And then I reheat it again under just like simmer or under just before simmer. And then I serve it. And then you have the fateh, the different fatehs, where you use yogurt mixed with tahini and garlic. And it's a kind of topping rather than a sauce. It's a multi-layered dish that can be vegetables, meat, or chickpeas, only chickpeas, and the yogurt is poured on top. And you have toasted bread as well.
It's one of my favorite. I love the contrast of meat with a cool, creamy sauce. I think that's one of the best combinations that we should see more here. So I just want to end with two more. Falafel. Falafel has grown. The company I work for actually started making falafel in Boston out of a food truck in 2008. And because the word falafel was not known here, the company continues to today to call them chickpea fritters to describe what they are, because to an American audience, that was a little more accessible. But now I just get customers saying, why don't you just call these things falafel? So they know now. So what are falafel, and what does a Lebanese falafel look like?
Well, a Lebanese falafel is very crisp on the outside and rather smooth, not smooth, but like moist on the inside. The secret to perfect falafel is to grind them in a meat grinder on a fine, with a fine disc, so that you get like a granular paste rather than a very smooth paste, and that makes it more airy and like more crunchy on the outside. I was taught this by a friend of mine who had a restaurant in London, which was the best Lebanese restaurant then. But you can have falafel made with only chickpeas, never cooked raw chickpeas that have been soaked overnight, or with a mixture of chickpeas and peeled fava beans, again soaked overnight. And then you add, if you want, cilantro, garlic, a lot of garlic, and maybe a little bit of parsley, I don't remember, and then spices and bicarbonate of soda, or baking soda, as you say in America. And that baking soda is added at the very end, like half an hour before frying, and that's to kind of make them a little bit more fluffy. And of course, salt.
What size are they typically?
Well, you have the falafel implement, which is very interesting, which is like a kind of cylindrical cup, which is, I think, maybe 2 inches, maybe a little bit more than 2 inches. And then you kind of fill that cup has like a disc on a lever inside it. So you pull down the disc, the lever where the disc is. You kind of fill the cup with the falafel mixture, and you kind of fill it in a kind of slightly pyramidal shape. Some people hole in the middle, and then above the very hot oil, you release the lever, and that disc pushes the falafel mixture into the hot oil, and it fries in like 2 or 3 minutes.
And you do need to be so careful on that, because if you don't put enough, it just gets fried to a crisp. You don't get that soft interior.
It has to be thick enough to get that crunch on the outside and the moist inside, but not so thick as to kind of be still raw inside. Because it's uncooked legumes.
Yes. And you also dive into desserts around the country. Desserts I wouldn't say it's at all the focus of the book, but you chose sort of representative of examples from around the country. So what would you say are the broader principles of what desserts appeal to a Lebanese audience? And are there any flavor profiles you think should be known more internationally?
Well, the flavor profile of most of these sweets, because they're not usually desserts, they're very rarely served at the end of a meal, is rose water and orange blossom water in the syrup. I mean, it's sugar. I mean, obviously, a lot of sugar. And most of them are drenched in the syrup that's flavored with orange blossom water and rose water. Most of these sweets are the preserve of professional sweets makers and are very rarely made at home. But there are some that are made at home and that are better when they're homemade. Like namura, for instance, which is the syrupy cake, like a sponge cake, but made with semolina, and again, drenched with syrup and garnished with nuts. Or sfoof, which is a turmeric cake, again, like a sponge cake, but a bit more dense, and made with olive oil rather than butter. And it rises in the oven because it has baking soda in it. No eggs. So it's completely vegan, by the way. And you can garnish it with almonds or with pine nuts. And this cake is the typical sort of after school snack of my youth, let's say, and of every Lebanese youth. It fell out of fashion for a while, and now it's back in fashion.
And generally, desserts not an after dinner course.
No, they're served with coffee. When people come and visit, Lebanese people are very hospitable, so they'll always offer coffee or tea or soft drinks or whatever. And then there'll be a platter of sweets.
Boy, I love coffee, and we don't have time to get into the whole coffee culture, but it would be great to hear just a little bit about what's the coffee preference in Lebanon.
Well, we call it Turkish coffee. I mean, I call it Turkish coffee. Some people say, no, it's Arabic coffee. Well, whatever. It's basically very thin, very finely ground coffee that is boiled, which goes against this notion of coffee in the West. And you can sweeten it or not sweeten it. But what's very amusing, and it's so served into small espresso cups. But what is very interesting is that because it's kind of thick, it's made quite thick, and the grounds settle in the cup. People turn over the cup And there's this this kind of tradition of reading the cup, reading the future of the person whose cup it is. If there's a white line, they have an open road in front of them, and if there's a circle with dots around it, it means that they have a bad ring. And
I think we're on Earth. That's your next book right there: fortune telling in the coffee grounds. And is it quite dark coffee?
Yeah, it's quite dark. I make it when I'm in Lebanon. This is what I have every morning. Before my mother left us, she would make it for me, but now I make it for myself.
It sounds like a real get up and go drink.
Yeah.
It's a kick in the pants.
It has a lot of caffeine. I can drink more of our coffee than like espresso or, whatever Western coffee. I can go to sleep. Whereas if I drink coffee in the West, if I do that after 11 or 12, I can never go to sleep. So probably it has less caffeine, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Anissa Helou, thank you so much. Again, the name of the book is Lebanon, Cooking the Foods of My Homeland. It's a great book. I always look forward to when I see you have something new coming out. And thank you for coming back to Out of Office.
Thank you so much for having me.
And now it's time for the last stop.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the last stop on this train. Everyone, please leave the train.
All right, Ryan. Well, we're here in the last stop. I want to thank Anissa Helou for joining us. I could talk to her. I'm considering a spin-off podcast with just Anissa.
You've been threatening this for a while. So
if only she'd return my calls more than once every 7 years. So again, the book is Lebanon. Pick it up. It's awesome. I am actually going to be cooking from it this very weekend. But Ryan, we can't talk about that now because this is the last stop. It's the last segment of the show. It's the final segment of the show. It's my favorite segment. It's your favorite segment. It's popularly known as the people segment because we come together as a community to share. It could be a story, an article, a memory, a gear review. It could be anything, so long as it inspires the spirit of wanderlust within us, even during the workaday week. So Ryan, I want to ask you, as I ask you every episode, do you have a last stop this week?
I do, Kiernan. I actually just started planning a trip to a new country in August.
Baby. New to you? You've not been?
New to me. Yeah. It's not like a new country. It's been around a while.
Sure. What is it?
Brazil.
Oh, God. It's pretty amazing to me you haven't been to Brazil yet.
Well, famously, I tried to go to Brazil. And it didn't
yes. Famously. God, I wish I knew the episode that story was in. But Ryan got caught in sort of that no man's land where, there's no authority in an airport and you wouldn't be let in.
Yeah, I didn't know that I needed a visa. So this time I know that I need a visa and I've gone ahead and applied, and it only takes a few days. It's an electronic visa, really, really easy. So that should be the least problematic part of the trip, hopefully. And so we're headed to Rio, and then sort of TBD. But that's sort of the kickoff point. So I'm really excited. If folks have Brazil Recs, send them in the old Instagram OOO podcast or outofofficepod@gmail.com. I'd love to get your Brazil Recs. It's my first time. My Portuguese at least is almost as bad as my Spanish.
Which is to say it's almost as good as your Spanish.
Well, that's exactly what it is to say, yeah. I mean, I think if I just speak my Spanish, people might just assume I'm speaking terrible Portuguese.
Ooh, that's good. I like that approach. Who knows? Maybe your bad Spanish is good Portuguese.
Yeah, or better, at least better Portuguese.
And how long is this going to be an extended work from Brazil phase?
Probably like only 2 weeks.
Great. That's awesome.
Yeah, it'll be a nice getaway, and super excited. So that I think is a real last stop.
I mean, I have not been to Rio, and my closest association is when Max Bialystock and the producer says they're going to take the money and then go to Rio. You remember that?
I think I do remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure most of our Broadway hating audience doesn't. Hey, did you catch the Tonys, Ryan?
I did not, but I caught a little bit of the Knicks game. That's a big thing happening.
Yeah, if that's what our audience cares about, I really don't understand them. But your buddy Cole Escalo is looking great at the Tony Awards, but I don't want to go too deep in this, just because I know that I can hear the iPhones being switched off.
I know. Well, Cole's headed to London to do O'Mary there, so folks should check it out if they're in London. And,
a great show, O'Mary. I saw it in New York with Cole, and it was incredible.
O'Mary is a very America 250 kind of show, I think.
I'll be interested to hear if it resonates with the Brits. I don't know. Well, it's very over the top farce. Yeah, it'll resonate. It'll resonate. Yeah.
Kiernan, did you bring a last stop this week?
I did, of course, Ryan, which is, I've noticed in our archives, we are really obsessed with the Sagrada Familia, the great Gaudi cathedral in Barcelona. We always report here when there's major news, and there's major news this week, which is Pope Leo showed up in order to bless the brand new highest tower. There's 18 towers at the Basilica. This one, you'll understand why it's named this, is the tallest, and it's called the Tower of Jesus Christ. And the Pope there was this crazy fireworks show. They made Gaudi's face appear in fireworks above it. I mean, this was real.
That was in drone. That was a drone show.
Was it? No. Was that drones?
Yeah, that was drones.
Okay. Do you know, I just want to say the New York Times called it choreographed fireworks. So it appeared to be drones to me as well, but be it as it may, Gaudi's face appeared above the cathedral. It was extraordinary. Really Disney World meets Vatican.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's, they still got a few more years before they actually get the full thing done, right? But,
yes. And it's very controversial because the entrance that they want to build basically means displacing hundreds of families in a neighborhood that's right close by. So
yeah, I was just there, like not a few months ago.
I know you were,
and heard the updates in that story and saw the apartment building. But those folks have had the plans now for they've been some time. They've had some time to sort of plan.
Well, they have time to protest. I guess they were hanging out black ribbons from their windows to let the Pope know that this wasn't welcome by everyone. But it sure looked like a joyous occasion. And Ryan, I want to leave us with a beautiful quote from the Pope. I think you and I will end on sort of a philosophical note. He said, "This church is a single building made of many stones, a house that grows steadily over the years, following a single plan, much like life." He didn't say the "much like life" part, but that's what he was trying to say.
I love that.
Okay. Yeah, me too. It's beautiful. So Ryan, I hope you go enjoy the many stones of your latest trip. Brazil will be yet another stone. And until then, I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Kiernan Schmidt.
And this is Out of Office, a travel podcast.
This seat taken?
Fireworks or drones? That one I'm going to have to delve deeper because I'm twittering that.
God, are we looking at a recalculating here?